The grand archive of the Dominion was a cathedral of silence. Endless towers of data vaults stretched into the darkness above, lit by pale threads of luminescence embedded in the walls. For most archivists, the quiet was comforting, a space to lose themselves in records and rote preservation. For Valentor, it was suffocating. He moved along the suspended walkway, his slender hands gripping the railing as his eyes scanned the endless shelves. The air was cold, recycled too many times through the filters. He told himself it was the chill that raised the small quills along his neck, not the unease that had grown over the last cycles. The system had flagged a misfiled slate. A trivial error, usually the result of a novice mishandling catalog entries. Valen expected little more than a mislabeled agricultural census. Yet when he pulled the slate from its drawer, its surface shimmered with a seal he had never seen: Mythic War Era, Level Sigma Restriction. He frowned. Sigma classification was reserved for material locked by the High Command itself, not something that should have slipped into his daily audit. His access tag blinked red when he tried to open it. Denied. He stood for a long moment, the slate heavy in his hand. Archivists were expected to return restricted files without question. Yet the Dominion's archives had always hidden too much. Entire centuries missing from public record, whole campaigns excised, events explained only as internal restructuring. The holes in history gnawed at him. Sigma, he whispered to himself. What are you doing in my section? Valen slipped the slate into his satchel. He knew what he was about to attempt was forbidden. But curiosity had gnawed at him for years, and now, for the first time, he held something the censors had overlooked. In his private chamber, screens flickered around him as he bypassed lockouts. He worked with a practiced hand, using old archivist tricks, looping verification pings, inserting false citations, stacking credentials in ways only someone who lived inside these systems could. The slate resisted, security protocols tightening around it like a predator's jaw. Come on, he muttered, forcing another override. Then, the seal cracked. The screen bled into static before resolving into fragmented records. Lines of military dispatches, half-corrupted testimonies, casualty reports. He skimmed the text, his pulse quickening. Fleet strength, 3,700 warships engaged. Losses, 3,642 confirmed. Enemy casualties, negligible. Civilian evacuation incomplete. Estimated planetary deaths, 4.2 billion. Designation of enemy species, human. Valen leaned back, the word echoing in his mind. Human. He had heard the name only in whispers, dismissed as old folklore. Parents used it to frighten hatchlings into obedience. Eat your ration or the humans will come for you. Soldiers spat the word in training as a joke, faster than a human, deadlier than a human. But here it was, embedded in official Dominion records. He dug deeper. The testimony of a fleet captain scrolled across the display, ragged and desperate. They do not fight for territory. They do not fight for resources. They fight as though war itself is their nature. Their ships burn, yet they press forward. We destroy 10, 20, and still they come, teeth bared, unrelenting. I fear they cannot be killed as we understand death. Valen's quills bristled. He swallowed hard, pressing on. The files painted a picture of madness, entire Dominion fleets consumed in single engagements, planets reduced to ash, soldiers describing enemies who laughed as they bled. It was unthinkable. No species fought like this, not against overwhelming force. A fragment of audio loaded. He hesitated, then activated it. The voice that filled his chamber was calm, human, deeper, rougher than Ketheri tones, but steady, controlled. This war ends when we say it ends. Not before. Valen froze. The words carried no anger, no arrogance, only certainty. It was the voice of someone who believed every syllable, someone who had the power to make it true. He replayed it once, then again, leaning closer, as though hearing it differently the second time might strip away its weight. But each repetition pressed on him heavier than the last. Valen forced himself to shut down the audio. His chamber was silent again, but the silence no longer comforted him. He sat back, trembling slightly. He should have stopped there. Instead, he returned to the records, scrolling faster. "Pray you never meet one." The phrase recurred again and again, in officer reports, in survivor debriefs, even carved into the metadata of some files as if to ward off whoever read them. "Pray you never meet one." He whispered it aloud, as though tasting it. "Pray you never meet one." He snapped the slate closed, his breath uneven. He had read thousands of Dominion records over his career, fabricated victories, sanitized defeats, endless layers of censorship. Never had he felt the raw fear of witnesses bleed through like this. Whatever humans were, they had been real. And the Dominion had tried to erase them. Why? A chime broke his thoughts. The archive system had flagged his session. Unauthorized access detected. He cursed softly, sweeping the slate into a hidden compartment. Too late to erase traces. Command would know someone had bypassed Sigma locks. For the first time in years, Valen felt genuine fear, not the dull dread of bureaucratic oversight, but the primal fear of being noticed. He left his chamber quickly, walking the upper corridors of the archive, but the silence no longer felt like sanctuary. It felt like a trap. He imagined eyes in the shadows, agents already watching. As he crossed the transit bridge to his quarters, the human's voice echoed again in his memory. "This war ends when we say it ends." The Dominion had always told its citizens that no enemy could ever challenge its supremacy, that its fleets were invincible, its reach eternal. But the words he had just heard did not belong to a defeated species. They belonged to a predator resting between hunts. And if the records were true, the hunt might not be over. The summons arrived at dawn, stamped with the crimson seal of the High Command. No archivist in living memory had ever been called to the spire, and Valen felt the weight of that anomaly as two armored guards escorted him across the silent halls. He kept his breathing measured, hiding the unease that clawed at him. The slate was locked in his quarters, buried beneath false catalogs, yet the system logs were impossible to erase. The lift ascended through layers of the Capitol, until the archive's dim austerity gave way to polished corridors of steel and glass. At the topmost chamber, massive doors hissed open. Inside waited Admiral Cale Varen. The man was tall, lean for a Ketheri, his ceremonial armor dark as obsidian. His eyes, pale and unblinking, followed Valen with the quiet calculation of a predator. "Archivist Valen Tor," Varen said, voice even. "You access restricted material. Tell me why." Valen bowed slightly. "Errors in the catalog. I was correcting." "Spare me." Varen gestured, and the doors sealed behind them with a low thud. "Do not insult me with weak fabrications. You broke Sigma locks. Few even know how." The chamber felt suddenly smaller. Valen forced himself to meet the Admiral's gaze. "Then you already know why. The records were buried. Buried poorly. If they were so dangerous, why allow them to exist at all?" For the first time, a flicker of something, amusement or irritation, passed across Varen's face. He stepped closer. "Because truth cannot be destroyed, only hidden. And some truths are corrosive. Tell me, Archivist, what did you see?" Valen hesitated. Speaking the word felt like drawing fire. But silence was worse. "Humans," he said quietly. The air between them thickened. Varen regarded him for a long moment, then exhaled slowly. "So you saw them?" He turned away, pacing to the wide viewport where the city stretched below. "Once, our fleets darkened half the galaxy. We believed ourselves invincible. Then humanity rose from a backwater world and taught us terror." Valen's pulse quickened. The Admiral was confirming it openly, what the files only hinted at. "We outnumbered them 20-1. Varen continued, his voice low. "Our weapons were older but vast in number. It did not matter. They struck without hesitation, relentless. Entire systems lost in days. We destroyed their ships, and still they came, burning with a fury we could not match." He turned sharply, his eyes narrowing. "Do you know how the war ended, Archivist?" Valen shook his head. Varen stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. It didn't. They ended it. They stopped. Not us. Them. In the middle of their advance, they halted and withdrew. Without reason, without condition. We were not spared by victory. We were spared by mercy. The word chilled Valen more than any threat. Mercy. He thought of the calm voice in the recording, declaring the war would end when they chose. Why? He asked before he could stop himself. Varen's expression hardened. That question has haunted me for decades. Perhaps they found another enemy. Perhaps they grew bored. Perhaps they considered us beneath extermination. It does not matter. What matters is that they could return. And if knowledge of them spreads, if panic grips the Dominion, our civilization will fracture before they even lift a weapon. Silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. Valen's instincts screamed to back away, to beg forgiveness. Yet another part of him, the same that had pried open the archives, kept him steady. If they are truly gone, he said carefully, why bury the records? Why not admit the war and claim we survived it? Varen leaned close, his voice a razor. Because no one survives humanity. We endure only because they allowed it. To reveal that is to reveal our fragility. The Dominion stands on fear and certainty. Strip either away, and it collapses. He studied Valen with piercing eyes. So I give you this choice, forget what you saw, or be forgotten yourself. That night, back in his quarters, Valen replayed the Admiral's words. His mind twisted around them, searching for meaning, but every interpretation led to the same truth: the Dominion lived in the shadow of a predator. And its leaders feared panic more than they feared extinction. He locked the slate again, intent on burying it. Yet when the room's lights dimmed for rest, a noise broke the silence, a faint click at his door. Instinct drove him under the desk. The door slid open soundlessly. Two figures entered, black-armored, faces masked, their movements precise. Dominion black cells. Assassins of the state. Valen's throat tightened. They had not come to intimidate. They had come to erase. The first operative scanned the room while the second approached the bed. Valen's mind raced. The desk console still glowed faintly. He triggered a hidden command with a flick of his wrist. The archive's internal drones were linked to his credentials. If he timed it right. A sharp whine split the silence as a drone descended from the ceiling, blaring a security alert. The assassins whirled, one firing a pulse round that scorched the wall. Valen dove for the satchel, seizing the slate, and hurled himself toward the service hatch. Energy bolts lit the chamber, burning through furniture, filling the air with smoke. He crawled through the narrow passage, heart pounding. Behind him, metallic footsteps gave chase. He twisted around, slammed the hatch shut, and overloaded the panel. Sparks showered the tunnel, sealing it in molten metal. Breath ragged, he stumbled out into the lower corridors, clutching the satchel to his chest. The slate inside pulsed faintly, as if alive. He could still destroy it. He could still run back, beg forgiveness, bury everything. Yet even now, the human's voice returned calm and certain. This war ends when we say it ends. No archivist could ignore that truth. Not anymore. By dawn, Valen was gone from the capital, his trail masked by falsified travel logs. The slate sat on his lap as his small vessel slipped into the void. He replayed the files, searching every corner for answers. In the corrupted metadata, he found them, coordinates embedded like a secret signature. A dead system on the Dominion's frontier. He stared at the numbers glowing on the screen, weighing fear against the hunger that had driven him since the first forbidden file. Varen was right. The Dominion survived only because humanity allowed it. But why? The only path forward was the one the Dominion had buried. Toward the system that once bore humanity's shadow. Valen set the course, feeling the tremor in his hands steady. If the truth was death, then so be it. Better to die knowing than to live in the dark. As the stars stretched into lines and the ship leapt into faster than light, he whispered into the silence, not sure if he was praying or cursing. Pray I never meet one. The coordinates drew Valen to the edge of the Dominion, a place so desolate that even smugglers avoided it. His vessel dropped from faster-than-light into a star system half dead, its sun a dim red ember. The moment space stabilized around him, he knew the records hadn't lied. Scarred planets circled in silence. One world was split down the middle as if something had cracked it like brittle glass. Another bore burned scars visible from orbit, entire continents melted into obsidian plains. Wreckage drifted in the void, hulks of warships, some Dominion, some of unknown design, their skeletons frozen where they had fallen. His stomach turned as he guided the ship closer. The silence was oppressive, the kind that pressed into the mind and whispered of ghosts. "This is what mercy looks like," he muttered. The NAV systems pinged faintly, locking on to a faint transmission. It pulsed from the third planet, weak but steady. Against his better judgment, Valen followed. His vessel skimmed through broken skies before setting down on a blasted plateau littered with charred metal. The signal led him to a facility still intact, though scarred with battle. Massive doors stood ajar, scorched but unbroken. Inside, the air tasted stale and metallic, machines slumbering in the dark. His boots echoed with each cautious step as he descended into its depths. At the center, he found a chamber untouched by time. A console rested within a circle of dormant lights. He hesitated, then placed the slate into a slot. Power surged. The chamber came alive. The air shimmered. And then, he froze. A figure stood before him. Not real, but no less terrifying for it. It was human. Tall, broad-shouldered, its features carved with harsh lines. The image flickered but held. Its eyes locked on his, not seeing him but looking through him, as if even in death the presence could weigh and measure. Then it spoke. "If you are hearing this," the voice said calm and clear, "know that we left not in weakness, but in restraint. We withdrew because we chose to. We do not vanish. We wait." Valen's knees weakened. The tone was identical to the fragment he had uncovered, steady and assured. There was no boast, no fury, only fact. "Do not seek us," the projection continued. "We will return when we are needed. Or when we are angered. Pray it is not the latter." The hologram dissolved into silence. Valen stood trembling, the words sinking into him like blades. The confirmation was undeniable. Humanity had not died. They had simply paused. "By the stars," he whispered, backing away from the console. The moment stretched, heavy with dread, until a sound broke it, metallic clatter from the corridor above. He spun. Footsteps, armored, precise. Dominion soldiers poured into the chamber, rifles raised. At their head stood a commander in black armor, visor reflecting the flickering lights. "Archivist Valen Tor," the voice barked. "Surrender the data." He clutched the slate to his chest. "You heard it. You had to hear it. You can't silence this." The commander stepped forward. "That is exactly why you must die." Behind them, the console flickered. A fragment of the human's voice bled through again, unbidden, echoing across the chamber. "Pray it is not the latter." The soldiers froze. Even armored and trained, they faltered. The sound carried weight, primal and undeniable. Valen used the hesitation. He darted for the side corridor, bolts of plasma striking the walls around him. The narrow passage shook with gunfire as he stumbled upward, lungs burning. Behind him, the echo of the human voice still lingered, as though the facility itself refused to let the Dominion forget. He burst into the open air, smoke and dust swirling as ships descended overhead. His small vessel lay waiting, engines humming. Shots rang out, scorching the rock, but he threw himself aboard and slammed the hatch shut. The craft roared skyward, atmosphere burning against its hull. Dominion fighters rose in pursuit, but his NAV systems were already locked. He hurled the vessel into faster-than-light before their weapons could find range. Only when the stars blurred did he breathe again. His body shook, but his grip on the slate was iron. He had the truth now, undeniable and carved into his very bones. He replayed the message in his mind, every syllable etched in fire: "We do not vanish. We wait." Hours later, alone in the quiet hum of space, Valen began to record. His hand steadied as he spoke, not for the Dominion, not for Varen, but for those who might one day find his words. I met a human long ago, he said, voice rough with exhaustion. Not in flesh, not face to face, but in their shadow. I saw what they left behind, and I pray you never meet one. For if mercy was the only thing that saved us, then mercy can end. And when it does, no wall, no fleet, no empire will hold them back. He ended the recording and sat in silence, staring into the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond maps and borders, humanity waited. And he prayed they never returned.